We now will turn to, I think, something quite different from that presentation. My former colleague, Stephen Kiehlmann, Professor of Public Management, Kennedy School of Government, Harvard University, will present. Steve.
Thank you, Michael, and thanks to the organizers of the conference for inviting me and my colleagues from abroad to be with you here today. So this is my topic, performance measurement and governance improvement. That's what I'll be talking about. And I'm going to focus on what I would regard as a key element, perhaps the key element of good governance, namely the performance of government. It's not the only part of good governance, but it is very central. It's hard to imagine to me that you can have good governance without government performing well. I think they're very closely connected. And by good performance, by government performance, I basically very simply mean, very simple question, how good a job is the government doing producing improvements in the lives of our people? So if we look at Vision 2030, there are a whole range of government activities which are discussed in that vision. Just to take two examples, the vision talks about performance in the area of health and gives a number of KPIs to measure government performance in health. There are more than I'm listing today, but for example, some of the KPIs which measure how well is the Saudi government performing in terms of performance in health would be percentage of people who smoke or who are obese, what percentage of people receive emergency room treatment within 4 hours. So that's the health area. If you take the area of education, again, some of the KPIs in Vision 2030 are the average student test results in math and science and reading. So those are measures of good performance in the Vision 2030. And the basic point I'm going to argue today, and that my brief remarks will discuss, is the idea that a crucial tool to improve government performance is measuring performance, is performance measurement. That's in some ways, my central theme today. And I'm going to do something that right now that's very American, that reflects American culture, maybe more than the culture of some other countries. We like in the US to give the audience a chance to participate in a presentation, not just we stand in the front and you listen. So I'm actually going to ask you all one question, and what I'd like to do, those in the audience who can give an answer in English, since I don't have the Arabic translation, so the question I want to ask to everyone in the audience, but whether you can answer in English or not, think about your answer to the question, which is, what is the single most commonly used performance measure if you take all organizations in the world, not just government organizations, take all the organizations in the world, what is the single most common performance measure? Is there somebody who would like to suggest an answer to my question who can say it in English? Somebody? Yes, sir. Profit. Do people agree with that? Profit? I agree. If you look at all the organizations in the world, thank you for your answer. The single most commonly used performance measure is profit used by business companies. That is the most common performance measure in the world. And the argument I would make is that in government, non-financial performance measures, we don't have usually profit as a performance measure, but non-financial performance measures are the equivalent for government of the profit measure in business. It's sort of the functional equivalent. And the idea is that managing using profit as a performance measure is a very important driver of good performance in companies. It helps companies perform better. Very importantly, helps them perform better. And my argument would be that this has similar potential in government, that using non-financial performance measures in government has a similar ability to help drive better government performance. And so getting more specific, there are sort of three ways, I think, generically speaking, that we can use in government performance measures to manage an organization. And these are, first, to motivate the people who work in our organization, the individuals, our individual employees, to do a better job. So first is to motivate our staff. The second is to focus our staff, to get across a message to our employees. What should be your priorities? What should you be spending your time on? So first is to motivate our staff. Second is to focus our staff. And then from the perspective of the organization, for learning, to help our organization figure out how to do a better job. So those are the three essential ways I think that we can use in our organization's performance measurement to drive better performance, to realize Vision 2030. And so let me talk just for a second about each of them. So using performance measures to motivate our staff is about the importance of goals. And there's a huge amount of research by scholars that very, very conclusively demonstrates that if you give a person a specific challenging goal to aspire towards, that will improve their performance compared to just saying to them, do your best. So I give this example here of a tennis player playing tennis that basically using a goal motivates you to stretch your performance, to do better than you would do otherwise. And so the basic way that performance measurement helps improve performance by motivation is through the importance of goals and the value of goals. In terms of focus, the basic idea is that managers and leaders can use a performance measure to communicate to our staff what their priorities should be. That is to say, of all the many things that an employee might do when they come to work every day, what do the leaders and the managers believe? What should you be prioritizing or concentrating your efforts on? So that's using performance measures to communicate a message about priorities. Those are both directed towards an individual staff member, motivate you to work harder, communicate what the important things to do are. In terms of learning, that's more in an organizational measure, which is developing different kinds of interventions or different ways of organizing or setting up the organization better so that the organization will do a better job. That's using performance measures to learn how to do a better job. And just to summarize, hold on, there's something skipped here. Hold on, it didn't come in. All right, I'm gonna have to, I skipped something here, I'm sorry, or it didn't come in and, sorry. We missed one of my slides, I don't know what happened to it, but I will summarize, you'll have to listen to me rather than look at the slides, I apologize. So we think of these three ways that performance measures can help produce better performance. So if you think about using performance measures to motivate, and I will try to speak slowly here so you can understand what I'm saying. When we use performance measures to motivate our staff, we try to get people to work harder, work more, do more, work harder. If we use performance measures to focus people, we're trying to get them we use it to get them to do the right things. So of all the things they could do, what do we want them to focus on? So that's if we use it to focus. If we use performance measures to learn, we're trying to do two things. It's not just get them to work harder, but get them to work smarter. And not just to do the right things, but to do things right. So those are just the three different ways we use performance measures, improve our performance in different ways. Now I'll go back to my slides. So an essential technique, in my view, for managing using performance measures is periodic, recurrent meetings to discuss the status of your performance targets and your KPIs in your organizations. So this is an example from the UK, probably the first important use of these performance meetings in government to try to drive improved performance was something done while Tony Blair was Prime Minister of the UK. He developed a sort of a priority list of 25 performance targets for 4 major ministries in the UK. And he had something set up called the Prime Minister's Delivery Unit. I understand you have one now in Saudi Arabia now. And basically what Blair did was, among other things, is once every quarter, he personally met with the ministers from the 4 departments that were subject to these performance priorities and met with them once a quarter to go over what the status of their targets was, where were they making progress, where were they having trouble, what are some things they could do better. And that was a way of having these recurring meetings to talk about improving performance. Here are some, this is a picture from the US. This is the city of Los Angeles. You can sort of see it says Los Angeles. If you can read that thing in the background that talks about Los Angeles. This is actually this is a photo of a real meeting in the Los Angeles city government to go over their performance targets in the area of street cleanliness and how clean and well managed and how well maintained the streets are. And these are actually managers sitting around the table talking about what are our targets, how are we doing, where are we doing okay, where do we have problems. And here are some of the briefing charts that are prepared for one of these meetings. So on the right-hand side, you'll see different neighborhoods in the city and how they're doing on their performance targets. So some of the areas are green, they're doing well. Some are yellow, they're in between. And some are red, they're having problems. And in the upper areas here, you see what are the main performance targets and what's the actual performance. And that's what they're discussing at that meeting. They're comparing their targets with how are they doing, and if they're coming short, sort of talk about what should we be trying to do better. That's the basic idea of these performance meetings. And in terms of good practice for doing these meetings, and that I would recommend for Saudi Arabia, is first is these meetings, these performance meetings, should be chaired by senior officials. A lot of the people who participate will be lower level staff, but they should be chaired by senior officials. Consider perhaps the minister or the deputy minister chairing these meetings. Really get the involvement of the senior leadership. For example, again, as I said before, in the UK, Prime Minister Blair himself chaired these meetings with the cabinet ministers. It was at the very top of the government that these meetings were run. In this context, what's the role of the audit function? Auditing, of course, has a role to play. However, I would argue that auditing cannot improve performance by itself. The organizations inside government, the actual organization, the health ministry, the education ministry, the justice ministry, all the different ministries, they are key to actually improving the performance. Auditors can serve them and help them and also serve the public, but the ministries themselves need to do a lot of the work. And so the role of auditing, I think the first role is to tell the public and tell the ministries and tell the royal court and the senior officials, tell the truth about what the performance is now. We don't want to have false reporting or reporting that's too, we would say in English, sugar-coated. It says everything is going fine. A first responsibility of auditors is to tell the truth about performance, including auditing data quality. Can we believe the numbers that the government report or that the ministries report in their performance reports? I think it's an important responsibility for you as auditors to audit data quality. And then maybe one role for you may be to audit capacity creation for using performance measures. So you might want to audit how robust are the procedures for having these performance meetings once a quarter, what goes on at these meetings? Are they actually looking at performance? That might be another auditing function for you. So my bottom line, I'm going to complete now, or continue, or finish up now, is Saudi organizations, you are all going to really need to change the way you're managed so you can use performance measures to manage your organizations. This is a very, very big challenge for you. This is, I think, fairly far away from the way your government ministries are doing business now. I'm calling for almost a revolution, a performance revolution in the way ministries do your jobs. And it's not going to happen overnight, but it's a very, very big change. The kinds of things we see where the Prime Minister meets with the ministers to talk about where are you doing on your performance targets, or the senior leadership in Los Angeles meets with managers about where are you doing on your performance. That's new for you in Saudi Arabia. You're really at the beginning of a long journey, an important journey, but it's a difficult journey, it's a long journey. And I guess I will just conclude by saying, I say in English, I say good luck. I'll say in your culture, say, inshallah, you will succeed. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve Kallman. I think just making an additional comment, the agenda that's put forward so far on the panel is for a governance revolution and for a performance revolution. And perhaps by the end of the presentation, we'll have more revolutions to call for in our panel. But although they sound like somewhat contradictory revolutions, perhaps the argument is they go hand in hand. That is to say, a governance revolution without a performance revolution might not actually be what you're looking for. It may not have all the merit that you're looking for. And I think a second common point is the importance of being able to rely on information. If in the absence of being able to rely on information, it's hard to have a proper management discussion or a proper governance discussion. And a lot goes in terms of organizational process to establishing a piece of information or a constellation of information as being something all the different parties can rely on. And in some sense, this is one of the fundamental beliefs of auditing, which is that if people could rely on information, the effects of that on the quality of the institution and the performance of the institution will be terrific, will be great. And there may be a lot of mechanisms that you need to call into action for people to be able to rely on information that truly is meaningful and relevant to the practice of governance management for the sake of performance and governance itself. So I think that's a point of contact.